guys, it's Glenn from glenscarcollection.com. And after owning many cars, I lost track at 100, been really lucky that I've been able to own all these awesome cars. I often get the question, what is your favorite car? I don't think I can narrow it down to a favorite, but I think I can narrow it down to a top 5. Now, if you're a long-time subscriber to the channel, you know when I give you a top 5 list, I always throw an extra car or two in there, so this will actually have more than 5 cars. So make sure to watch this video to the end, because you may be surprised with some of my choices. Now, reviewing all these cars, we've reviewed over 600 cars, more than any YouTube channel. Obviously, it takes a lot of time and a lot of money. You have to buy cameras, GoPros, SD cards, editing software. It costs gas, tolls, and mileage to get to these places, days off from work, fixing all the cameras and GoPros. So I only ask 2 things of you guys who watch this video. 1, and they're both free. 1, subscribe, and the other to hit the notification bell. All right, so remember to like and share this video with your friends and leave a comment below with your top 5 cars. All right, so without further ado, here's my top 5, but as promised, if you watch it all the way to the end, there will be more than 5 cars. All right, the first car may be pretty obvious, and that is the BMW E46 M3. I like this car so much, I've owned 2 of them. Now, what's not to like? First of all, I think beauty. This is the best looking M3 in my opinion that's ever made. If you know a better M3, leave it in the comments below. If you agree with me, leave that in the comments below. Now, I love all kinds of E46 M3s, no matter whether they're what color they are, but my favorite is the manual transmission coupes. My first one, if you follow the channel, was a Laguna Seca Blue, sunroof delete, black interior, 6-speed manual coupe. And recently I bought this car, which is even rarer than Laguna Seca Blue, Mystic Blue, black interior. This one does have a sunroof, 6-speed manual, and obviously a coupe. I just love this car. This is probably one of the most fun cars you can drive. 333 horsepower, an engine that revs over 8,000 RPM, and that's rear-wheel drive, something that's definitely missing in today's sports cars. Now, it has a high 0 to 60 time, probably around 4.9 seconds, somewhere in that range. If you drive it against some of the modern turbocharged cars, it will not feel fast. It will feel slow. If you drive it in isolation for a few days, or you know, you have it as your daily driver or as your second car, it will seem like a faster car to you as you drive it more often. If you get into a fast modern car, then obviously comparing it directly with that will seem slow. But the drama of revving this out to 8,000 RPM is something you'll always remember for the rest of your life. I highly recommend an E46 M3. They are older cars now. They were built here in the United States from 2001 to 2006, so you will have to maintain them. They can be money pits for sure, but like anything, it is a labor of love, and you won't mind throwing money into this car, but I definitely highly recommend it. The next car is a car I should have bought many times before, but never did, and that's the Acura NSX. Now, if you know cars, Acura really only exists in North America, so if you're watching this in a different country, you may know it as the Honda NSX, and I think this is one of the most fun cars you can ever buy, and one of the few cars you can still buy today that goes up in value almost every year. What's not to like about this car? Mid-engine, rear drive, and almost all of them have a 6-speed manual. So if you're shopping for E46 M3s and you want a manual transmission, you got to do the searches on manual. You got to look at all the pictures. Half the cars that are listed as manual transmission, when you look at it in the pictures, it has SMG. You don't have to worry about that with the NSX, because 90% of these cars came with manual transmissions. Again, it has a high revving engine, and this time a V6 engine, revs to over 8,000 RPM, and what's even better than front engine cars is that engine is right behind your eardrums. So nothing's better than mid-engine. I've always bought other cars in the past, mid-engine cars, my Cayman S, my Exige S, and always kind of passed by the NSX because it's not really like a 0 to 60 car. 0 to 60 is about 5.2 seconds or so. The earlier models, this car I bought twice as well. My first one, kind of how our YouTube channel started here, was a 95 black and tan NSX. That's about 5.7 to 60. When these cars first came out in 1991, they were actually going against the Ferrari 348. So this was a much faster, reliable, comfortable car, better handling, better 0 to 60 time. The 348 had a 0 to 60 time of about 6.0 seconds. Had a lot of quality issues, very expensive to maintain. The NSX was the complete opposite of that. Once I bought my first NSX, I bought that 1995 model in 2012, I've owned an NSX ever since. I actually had both of them for a while and then sold the black one, and this blue one I'm going to keep forever. They come in great colors. Red is the most popular color. If you want an off color like I had black, there obviously you can get them for cheaper. And what I liked about having the black car is if you do see another NSX at a Cars and Coffee or something, it is usually red. This color, there were 3 different blues for the NSX. This is the last one. This only came with the pop-up headlights in the last version of the first NSX, which here in the United States was built from 2002 to 2005. This is Long Beach Blue and only Long Beach Blue Pearl, not to be confused with Long Beach Blue from the BMW M2. And they only made about 88 examples of these cars here in the United States over that 4-year period. And this is in '05, which is the last year. So this is definitely a keeper car for me. If you've ever driven an NSX, you'll realize how good they are. It's very sharp handling, comfortable, and very easy to maintain. When you buy older cars from the early 2000s, like an E46 M3, you will shovel thousands of dollars in maintenance and preventive maintenance and repairs. The NSX, it's basically a timing belt every 7 to 10 years and oil changes. So definitely check out the NSX, and this is a car that I'm definitely keeping forever. The next car, unbelievable car, the Porsche 993 Turbo. This is an unbelievable car. This was the first, so I've driven the air-cooled cars, and I wanted a 993 in the worst way. And I drove it, and you know what? It drove kind of old. It wasn't very fast. It does have great sound. It does probably one of the best looking 911s. But what was missing from that car was power. Then I test drove a 993 Turbo, and it's one of the best cars I've ever driven. It's the first all-wheel drive turbo. It's the first twin turbo 911. So previous to that, they were rear drive and they were single turbo. So there was a ton of turbo lag. The original 930 turbos, the 964 turbos, they were fast when the turbo was on, but had a lot of lag being only a single turbocharged car. Also, they like to spin out on you because they were rear drive, and when that turbo hit, you didn't want to be in the corner. So the 993 Turbo, the all-wheel drive isn't there for bad weather, it's there for traction. So now that the car can hook up, Car Magazine's got as low as 3.7 seconds to 60. So this is really one of the first production cars, not counting an F40 or an F50 Ferrari, that made a 0 to 60 time in 3.7 seconds. And when you drive it, you'll think it's 1.7 seconds because it's such a visceral driving car. With the air-cooled cars being rear engine, you hear everything behind your head. 6-speed manual only. Yes, 6-speed manual only, so you don't have to worry on the turbos about trying to find a manual transmission. They are all manuals. And now this car, you don't need coffee if you own a 993 Turbo. Take it out in the morning before work or on the weekends. It has no traction control or no stability control. So the new turbos are super fast. The S models are even faster, but your grandmother can be fast in that car. It has so much electronic nannies. It's so isolated. You just stop and steer with that car. This 993 Turbo, when those turbos kick in, you better be pointing straight. And just being fast in this car, even though it's a super fast car, takes a lot of skill. The handling is excellent in the car. You can really learn. There's a learning curve with it, of course, but using that rear drive weight bias, once you learn how to control that, it is an amazing car. All right, the next car up is really the only exotic car I've ever owned out of those 100 cars, and that is the McLaren 570S. What's not to like here? Carbon fiber tub, V8 turbocharged engine, 0 to 60 time, people have gotten as quick as 2.8 seconds. And from owning one, I can tell you, I definitely believe it. McLaren quotes a 0 to 60 time of 3.1 seconds, but as everybody knows, their 0 to 60 times are very conservative. It's also mid-engine, so you get razor sharp handling. It has got a dual clutch transmission that I think is even better than the latest Porsche GT3s. Driven all those cars, and I'm probably one of the few people that have driven them, I think the McLaren transmission is actually better. Downsides with the car, obviously they're going to be very expensive to maintain. They depreciate like a rock, so buy one used. And obviously I would not want to own this car without a warranty. But as far as visceral driving experience, you can certainly make a case, sell everything, and just own a McLaren 570S. Now the next car is one of my favorites, and definitely another car I'm going to keep forever, is the 2011 BMW 1 Series M. Now the 1 Series M was a 1-year only car, and it's again, like the NSX, one of the few cars to rise in values. High mileage cars sell for about $50,000. Low mileage cars are about $80,000. About $80,000. And I think in the future, we're going to see these cars, in the very near future, in the next probably 2 years, I think we're going to see low mileage M's, 1Ms, hit the 100,000 mile mark. What's not to like here? 3,200 pound car. Now, the horsepower is very underrated. So the 0 to 60 time, if you just look on the stat sheets, and when I was a kid, I was mesmerized with 0 to 60 times and quarter mile times, only has 335 horsepower, 332 foot-pounds of torque. On overboost, you can get 370 foot-pounds of torque for up to 10 seconds. And I believe it was Motor Trend or one of those car magazines actually dynoed these cars, and it's supposed to be 335 horsepower gross. They got about 325 horsepower net. So these cars are really pushing out to the crank about 370, 380 horsepower. And having that real short wheelbase makes this great lively handling. They don't come with sunroofs, which I love, so you get a lower weight, lower center of gravity. It's very lightweight for a modern car, 3,200 pounds, rear drive and manual transmission only. So it's really pushing out, 370, 380 horsepower in that short wheelbase car, and it is really a beast to drive. The only thing this car needs, just like the NSS, is an exhaust. They're very quiet from the factory, and that's, I think, my theory why the newer cars, the M2, the M5, the M3s have that fake sound, because a car like the 1M sounded amazing from the outside, but nobody can hear it on the inside. And even with a full exhaust like my car has, I still have to have the windows down to really hear it inside the cabin. Buy these cars now. These cars will definitely appreciate another 10, 20, 30, maybe even 50 grand over the next 10 or 15 years. And I think you'll be kicking yourself that you didn't own a BMW 1M. They only come in 3 colors. Valencia orange like mine, sapphire black or alpine white. Brand new, fully loaded like my car was $54,000. I think if I was buying one, I would buy either a fully loaded car like mine or a no options car. Would actually be really, really rare. All right, so those were 5 cars, but as you know, I always give you a bonus car in my video. And this car is right here, the BMW Z3 M Coupe. Now, this is not necessarily the fastest car in the world, but it's one of the best cars to drive. So it's got a high, very similar 0 to 60 time like the BMW 1M. And you could actually did a comparison of these two cars that you can watch on the channel, the 1M versus the M Coupe. The M Coupe was made here from 1999 to 2002. So the first 2 years, it had the E36 M3 engine, put out about 240 horsepower. The last 2 years, like mine, 2001, 2002, mine's a 2001, has the E46 M3 engine, the S54. So instead of making 333 horsepower, because the exhaust routing is different, it makes 315 horsepower, but it has a better power to weight ratio and is much rarer than an E46 M3. Here in the United States, we made about 26,000 E46 M3s. M Coupes with the S54 engine, I think there's about 3,000 M Coupes total here in the US. But the 2001, 2002 models, only 678 cars. So 678 cars versus 25,000 cars for the E46 M3. And you can see in 10 or 20 years how this will be worth much more. It's got a very short wheelbase like the 1M. And again, you can watch our comparison test where we really get into the nitty-gritty of both of these cars. And it's probably one of the most visceral cars you ever drive. It's very small, very nimble. Again, short wheelbase, rear drive, and it only comes with a manual transmission. So again, you don't have to worry about what transmission it has because they are all manuals. Now, this is a love it or hate it car. All the cars I put on my list, I think most car enthusiasts love. For the M Coupe, there's just as many people as hate this car that love this car. And I would think there's even more people that hate it. Maybe they just think it's ugly or something like that. And it took me a long time to warm up to this car. I thought this was the ugliest car in the world too. And then all of a sudden I'm collecting models of the Z3 M Coupe, and next thing I know I drive one and then had to have one. So the difference between the haters and the lovers of this car is the haters all have one thing in common. They've never driven one. I've never had anybody get out of an M Coupe that wasn't floored by the visceral driving experience. It's one of the most analog cars I've ever driven. Out of the 600 cars I've driven and the 100 cars I've owned. And this car, if you test drive this car once, you'll be selling everything. You'll be selling your children to try to buy one. All right, guys. Thanks again for liking and subscribing. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next video. Share these videos so my channel can grow, and leave your top 5 of cars you've owned below. I will respond and read each and every comment. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.